pushing it up because don't forget, in that food source basket, you have imported food. So it's still going up because the dollar is going up. Then secondly, you have flood. Flood has destroyed over 200,000 hectares of our rice farm. It's all under flood. Now, what means is you're going to have more challenges around food price now. And I was telling the Minister of Finance, release the grains now, the strategic reserves. Release them now before the panic will set in on food prices. And then give some license to some people to bring in some paddy for process. Otherwise, they will sack the workers.
To import paddy.
For them to process so that they don't sack their workers. So you already have redundant workers in the farmers, not because they've lost their food in the flood. You're now going to have workers leaving their job because they are not processing, no rice to process. So import paddy, and then of course you need to import some to bridge the thing by having some rice in the strategic reserve, some finished rice. So those are the things that have to happen now. And don't forget that as this is going on, there was a heavy demand for dollar last month, and the month before. Children starting school, people going for all kinds of holiday coming back, and then you have importers paying for the import for Christmas. So, and as they are paying for this import and coming in, you now have Christmas demand. Christmas demand is always highest in the country. That comes to inflation as well, but it helps growth because the growth will record, GDP will record increased activity, economic activity. But for inflation, it pushes inflation up. Okay. Because prices go up irrespective of what the real cost is, because the people have money, they want to spend it, prices go up. But in January, the story is going to change in January because the impact of the change in the currency, a lot of people would have now given up. Some of those fake currencies in the system will have problems. They have to go and use it to make firewood, okay? Because you're not going to get into the banking system because they're going to scan the money coming in. And then a lot of the monies are coming back too. And people do arbitrage. People are making money from changing currency and all that. They are now going to make money from people coming to deposit their money. Some of them are laundered money and all of that. You pay them 20% or 10% for them to put it for you in the banking sector. So, and then politics, they're sharing money to politicians. And then, of course, some of the politicians, some of the laundered money, they rather buy dollar with it and send them abroad or put it in their domiciliary account or use dollar to settle. So all of those activities will still portend pressure. But then from January to February, when the election spend would probably have been over, then you can see the economy will start settling. Because you now know the money in circulation. Everybody have come to collect new currency. But some of them will still go and put them in the sink somewhere or in the drainage system, the new currency. But at least we will stop buying new currency, which will spread in parties.
Okay, Prof, let's take a look now at the multidimensional poverty report. What are your views around it? I analyzed it a day after the report was released. I took the report down for our viewers to see. But what are your thoughts about this, very quickly?
Now, the multidimensional thing is really, it goes beyond UNDP Human Development Index. It goes beyond the World Bank Human Capital Development Index because they are all looking at different sides of this. They're always looking at infant mortality and age and all that. They're all looking at different parts of that same thing. But the multidimensional brings them all together, and it even brings more, like access to food and access to shelter and all of that basic needs. So it brings all of them, the monetary and the money itself as well. So, but one remarkable thing about this is that it shows that not only that 63% of our population are in that bracket experiencing multi-dimensional poverty. And don't forget they use index, so which means that it's a collection of different indicators that you index. So that's what it tells you. So the fact that these states, certain states are poor, what do you call it? You have Jigawa and Bayelsa and all the Kobe. The fact that they are ranked poor doesn't mean that you've got to be very careful in interpreting it, because there is a basket of indicators that you use to class them as poor.
But at the end of the day, you got an aggregate now. that made them like Sokoto State 91% being the poorest state in Nigeria.
Yeah,
that means that they perform poorly in all the indices and they arrive at the final calculation.
I understand.
Yes.
But the intensity will be slightly different as per indicators. Because in one indicator you could do better in one indicator, but do terribly worse in the other. So by the time you average it, it comes.
Yes.
So it's difficult for you to say, well, Bayelsa is the most in what particular. You have to be a bit careful in reading the data. You know, that's the point. Then it says something about the intensity, because the intensity is the one that connects to the how intense is it in particular a subgroup. You know, when you say people living below poverty line, below poverty line is intensity. Below poverty line, because you're actually looking at one that says people who, you know, $1.2 per day and on that are classed as below poverty line.
But that was not what was used for this.
No, that's not what is used, but that is what it is similar to.
Yeah.
The intensity of it is what's similar to. Then you also have the fact that there is a disaggregation of age, which shows that people between the age of 0 to 17 are disproportionately affected to a much higher degree. Now that is very important, because in terms of policy, you know, we have to target the effort on poverty, on multidimensional poverty reduction. But also it tells you the locational aspect, which is these are the northern zone are more over here and then than the south, and then the particular states in the north that are worse. So you know how to target. But there is also another area, which is where you now disaggregate those who are poor, and then you find out that a much higher percentage in the poverty area, like 62%, are actually to do with those who, if you look at out of school, take an indicator, out of school children, and then go and look at multidimensional poverty incidence in out of school children, you find that about 90% are actually the people that are poor. So those who are out of school, an overwhelming percentage are people who are poor. So which means that if you want to target poverty and invest in human resource at the same time, target these people who are child poverty. Child poverty is the one that will deliver two things. It will deliver a general improvement in poverty alleviation, but also deal with the social disorder in the after all, those young people will become adults at some stage. So resisting adult poverty should not be your biggest priority. The biggest priority should be child poverty. Because the child will still become adult tomorrow.
Now, the interventions by the government to reduce child poverty include school feeding program.
That is useful.
Yes. Include cash conditional transfer. Okay, see what happened.
That one's not for the children.
Yes, it's not for the children. What is really targeting the children is the school feeding.
School feeding.
Now, but if you take a look at free
education,
target them, which is by the states, which should be by the states.
Yeah, that should be. But don't forget that some of the states, if you look at UBEC, this is the universal basic
education.
They have a matching funding formula. So some states, you have to bring your counterpart to be able to download their own.
Okay,
so we have to deal with that. Whatever the states is available, let them have it. I'm not saying cancel it completely, but let help go there so that they can take down all that there is within their destiny with the resources. How can you have UBEC having surplus money that's not been drawn down?
And you're having
because you can't have that. So we should target resources to make sure that they will draw them down so that the children will be in school.
Okay, very quickly, Prof, what other measures can be implemented now, between now and May 2023? Because President Buhari says he wants to lift 100 million people out of poverty. This report is not really looking nice for him. You know, it shows that even the World Bank in their public finance review said since 2015 that Nigeria has worsened so far in terms of development. So what other measures, can you give me 1, 2, 3 very quickly before we close?
But the other measures you have to connect with IMF recommendation, because IMF says increase VAT from 7.5 to 15%, so more resources to the government. But government additional resources should go to make sure that they exhaust the resources that should go to states to target the young people for their education. So it is about how you allocate The other one is how you earn more. But they also said a bit more, like get out of this subsidy, fuel subsidy. Because for you to be gulping 6 trillion a year, only putting in only 2 trillion would even solve our child poverty issue. But, you know, so you've got to deal with the revenue, increase revenue. So that's where they were, of course, they have other suggestions they gave. But at least those two are around the revenue, increased revenue. But in terms of government allocation of resources, they should ensure